Hi, I'm Larry Lane. Come join me as we sketch the St. John's Evangelist Roman Catholic Church in Lambertville, New Jersey. It was kind of a cold afternoon, sun was setting, and the first step is to actually lay out the drawing. I'm using a Tombow felt tip pen, just using the fine liner part, trying to hold the end of the pen loosely, just to stay loose. I started off, as you saw, on the left side, showing the tower, kind of to get the height. I knew that would take up most of the paper, and I wanted to make it proportional for the overall scene of the thing. And then I worked a little bit more to the left, and just giving highlights of where the roof edges are going to be, and where the openings are going to be, and some groways on the side. And then I got myself a really thin 0.1 pen. It's a permanent marker because I'm going to be watercoloring over it. And with that, I'm just putting the outline. I'm not really getting too detailed into the sketch, although maybe I could go even more loosely on that. But putting in basically the outline of the sketch, so that I'll know more about the boundaries of where I want to watercolor. Now, my mentor, Ian Finley, will actually not put as much detail as I will. He'll allow the watercolor to kind of determine the boundaries of where the picture is going to be placed. I'm going to be a little bit more rigid on this one by doing this outline using the fine line pen a little bit more deliberately. And so you'll see I'm already showing some of the dentils along the eave of the sloped roof, and I'm showing some of the little tiny dormers on the tower, and those, and even the cross. And I'm just getting an overall lay of the land. It's starting to kind of flesh out because the Tombow, well, it's a water-based ink in there, and so my watercolor will kind of wash away that. This is just to kind of help me get an outline. Some people like to use pencil, and I learned to use the Tombow watercolor pens from Ian because they will, like I just said, wash away. I don't have to go back with an eraser and you're trying to erase the pencil marks. That can be a little difficult when you already have some watercolor on top of it protecting that pencil. So it's working out better for me using the Tombow. And I recommend you using a Tombow too for that reason. Here I'm putting some of the buttresses on the sides, and just to kind of give a definition of what the side is. And then with this church, it's got these tiny little Gothic arches and a bunch of more larger Gothic arches. They're everywhere. And so I'm putting those into these three windows that are right along the gable of that church. And then I didn't want to be too literal on the left side with those windows. I just kind of indicated a little bit of where they are. Didn't want to get too hung up on the steps. It's easy to take a long time on steps because you've got the rise, you've got the runs, and that would really slow me down. If I were drawing them as an architect with my architectural drawings, those type of details really take a lot of time because you've got to have it proportional correct. There are certain building codes that require it to be a certain size, but I don't have to worry about that here. Now we're going to put some watercolor on, and I'm wetting the paper right now so that I can kind of wash a whole facade with a color. I'm choosing blue on the side. The left side is actually where the sun is going, and so I will make it a little darker than the right side, although I know the roof is a little darker than the right side, but so is the real roof. And I'm trying not to be too literal, really, but I guess I kind of am with the darkness and so forth. it would be a fun exercise another time to draw this again, and don't even use the colors on the same colors on both facades. Use different colors and see how they can kind of mix and match. But the blue oftentimes is a good selection to give depth and to also shade a little bit of a facade that is normally a light color, maybe white or beige in this case. And then I'm putting a little bit of the red in order to define the top and also the doorways. And it's my hope that those areas will kind of highlight and outline the drawing. It'll also kind of draw your eye into some of the areas where they'll contrast with the blue. This is the fall season, and so I'm using yellow for the foliage on both sides to kind of frame the picture on left and right. And it truly is that way in real life. And you can see how I skewed the left side to go left and the right tower is going right. I did that on purpose to kind of give it a little bit more energy and just kind of whimsical fun. And then, just a little bit more color splashed here and there. I try to just use the blue, just kind of highlight these little arches. Then I had to go back and do a little bit more touch-up. Hey, I want to show you this part. In this area, it really bothered me because even though I skewed it, it looked a little bit too skewed. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash over that, and I'm going to allow the trees to kind of cover over that a bit. And in actuality, there's actually some tree there that indeed does that. So, I try not to be too literal, but in a way, that's my excuse to kind of put a tree in that area just to kind of hide out that quirky, skewed wall, which, it follows what I was trying to do, but I didn't really like it. I wanted to kind of hide it. Then I went back on to the drawing and added more line work. And I used a pen that is a little bit bigger than the outline pen that I used. Before I was using a 0.1. Now I'm using a 0.3, and I'll even use a 0.5 to give even more definition, a broader line work to accent different windows particularly. It's really, really helpful to be able to put a little bit of a dark on the edge of a window side and ahead where it's showing the shadow going towards that plane of glass or the panel of doors. You can see that I'm putting it right there on the left side because the sun is on the left side and it's going to be projecting the shadow onto those surfaces on that side. And there's quite a bit of shadow underneath those dentils, so I added that along the gables. Just giving some depth with the Tombow. And I want to share this with you. You see that cross on the left, on the top of the peak? Well, look at the shadow of the cross. It's right there on the tower. Pretty cool. So I'm going to make sure that I put that on our sketch as well. So and I'm following the shadow all the way down the side of the building to kind of show that there is a gap and there is a space, I say, between the actual sanctuary part of the building and the tower, with that really whimsical cross that you kind of have to know it's there in order to recognize it, but it's one of those hidden Easter eggs that I wanted to put in the drawing. The windows, I usually on the windows when I am putting color to a window, I usually use whatever the sky is going to be, and oftentimes sky is blue, right? Well, I would have a little bit of blue reflecting on the glass. And sometimes I don't paint the whole glazing, the whole panel of glass. I'll just put a little bit of blue. But in this case, I'm going to just darken all of it with black because I really wanted to have a pop. And I wanted my eye to be drawn to the front facade of the building, and so that's why I'm putting all black in there. You may want to play with all black too, and if you do that, you don't have to have the whole pane colored black. You can have just rectangles, parts of it and part of it white, indicating that maybe there is a reflection in there. Then putting some horizontal lines for the vents. There's vents in that tower. It kind of gives a little bit of character and show the viewer some of the things and highlighted things that I see when I'm actually looking at this scene and recording it on my sketch. This Tombow I have is pretty thick and it's a darker one, and it's really given me the opportunity to highlight different things that are kind of projecting a little bit proud or outside or in front of some of the other surfaces. And I also wanted to give some texture with the Tombow, so I got myself a lighter gray and just kind of spot here and there where there's some shades because the stone does project a little bit of shadow in some areas and not, just to kind of give it texture and indicate that it is a stone building. And there's some detail I wanted to put in there, more of the dentils. And then that line work I did of the dentils is still kind of obscure. You really cannot see it. And so what you're going to see is later on we'll be adding more black to the spaces in between those dentils to help make it pop out even more. And on this, I'm using hatch marks to be able to give some depth. Not just all black filled in, but you can use hatch marks, and hatch, which is lines. You can go vertically, you can go horizontally. You can actually go vertically and horizontal over it if you want to. And it doesn't have to be the entire surface. It can kind of graduate out and not be on the other end, just to show that there is a surface back there and it has some depth. There were these really cool tiny little windows on the side. They're vertical, so I wanted to show those right there. There's 3 on each side. And then there's a little bit more hatching to show that there is a depth to kind of a passageway into an opening where one can walk at the base of the tower. And then these dormers kind of need to be popped out a little bit more, so I added a little bit more shade onto that. Let's look at the trees. Try out some little trunks and then branches. The branches don't have to be all the way up to the top of the foliage area. Sometimes the foliage will actually cover over the branches. And so there's some areas where I have peekaboo kind of branches showing where foliage would cover over it, and some where they're just exposed. And I'll do it on both sides. Using hatches also on the trunk, particularly on the darker side that I perceive to be the darker side of the tree, just to give that some depth also. And then I like to outline the building sometimes. If you use watercolor, oftentimes you can use the contrast of a color over a lighter color, a darker over a lighter, and let that be your edge. But because I'm filling in some of these windows with a lot of pop, the edges of the building kind of blended out into the paper, and I wanted there to be a crisp line, just as I've done more of a pop and crisp line inside the windows to kind of balance it out. A little bit of shade and shadow in there, and I'm going to be actually using the Tombow to make some dash lines right there for stone and for some just gravel work, some loose gravel that's in the foreground, just to kind of give it some foreground depth, some context of where this building is placed. Hey, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to join me on the next episode.